Hey guys, it's Katie, and today I just want to do a video all about kind of understanding the idea of master versus dev branch, feature branches, things that are coming out in testing. We're getting a lot of frequently asked questions that are the kind of questions that are very hard to answer in short snippets of typing on the internet. Either I will accidentally sound rude, which I don't want to do, or I won't have enough time to not make it sound rude and type out the entirety of what I should be typing to help people out the best they can. So I'm turning to video and talking because this is a good way to show everything that really needs to be shown so that you understand why it is I can't give a quick answer to that type of question. So first off, Loop Docs has a frequently asked question page, all about branches. What is dev branch? What is master branch? How do they work together? How are things going? So there is a frequently asked questions page. Please go ahead and check it out. Much of what I'm going to say is starting from that page and then building off of that. The other part, so now that we're in Loop Docs, let's go ahead and get to the first part in Loop Docs that generally causes people to go, I'm confused what a branch is. And that's when you have to pick a branch to download. Is people get to this point, especially when we were before we had our latest master update and release. People are like, which branch do I use? How will I know? Well, the master branch is typically the one you're going to want to use. The master branch is stable, it's a known quantity. Dev branch is development branch, and it's a little bit more of a fluid, moving build of loop. So the analogy we use in the branch frequently asked questions is that loop is like a cookbook of code. And once the recipes are all tested and they're working great and the flavors are wonderful and all the recipes are just perfect, we release the cookbook, we publish it, in other words, and that release gets a number. So right now we're on release 2.0, and Master Branch is updated and everything is like, wah, and it's in Barnes and Noble and it's great. But then when new recipes come in or new flavors or new influences, and we want to update that cookbook with some new tweaks to it, we start taking that cookbook and marking it up. We start editing some of the recipes, and that happens in a test kitchen. And that's where dev branch comes in. Is we want to have a cookbook that's full of that markup that has the new saffron or the new amount of milk or less eggs or more flour, whatever the case is. All of those little edits and changes to the old cookbook, the master branch, that are being tweaked, all those tweaks are going to be in dev branch. So what I want to do is take you, if you click on, I'm going to go back here for a sec. If you click on Master Branch, you'll get a download of Master Branch. If you click on Dev Branch, you get a download of Dev Branch. And they show up in your Downloads folder labeled loop-dev and loop-master. And I want to show you actually what's happening when you click those over in GitHub, because GitHub is where most of the action's happening for this discussion. So let's go over there. We're going to go over to GitHub, and we're going to be in the LoopKit repository or LoopKit account. So in general, LoopKit, think of it as a person, basically, a person named LoopKit owns this account. Certain people have access rights for certain things and contributions and make decisions about what comes and goes. So for example, Pete is a good person to think of as an owner of the LoopKit account. Within LoopKit, there are several cookbooks. There's cookbook for Loop, but there's other ones like Loop Docs, which is what I tend to maintain. This is where all the code and information is stored for loopdocs.org. This is where loop code is stored. The next ones that are down here are a lot of what I call frameworks or helper repos for loop. So I'm going to click on loop, and I'm going to show you this file in here. If you scroll all the way down, is called cart file. And if you notice, the names of all of these folders and files correspond pretty much to the names of the folders and files that you get in your download. So GitHub is showing you the contents that you end up downloading. No big surprise, I hope, but it's just interesting. So cart file, let's click on it and take a look at it. If we click on that, it will show us the contents of the cart file. And basically what this one is it's telling Loop when it's building, it's going to need and get these helper things using a tool called Carthage. It's going to say, hey, Carthage, here's your cart file or shopping list. I need you to go grab LoopKit version 3.0. I need you to go grab CGM BLE kit version 3.2. I need you to grab all of these helper things at these particular versions or branches and bring those in when we build Loop. These are our shopping lists that we need. So I think that's one thing I want you to realize is that sometimes all of the code that you might be interested in changing or modifying or personalizing is actually in one of the frameworks rather than Loop code itself. So while we have directions on customizing certain parts of Loop, those are only for the ones that are actually in the Loop code itself. If the version of changes that you're trying to make involve things that are in um, algorithm math sometimes, carbs, insulin kit, CGM behaviors, some of the Riley link menus, those kinds of things, those are actually in other parts that get pulled in by Carthage and Cartfile. And so if you're going to change these, it takes a special kind of process to be able to sync those up all together during this shopping experience where it goes out and gets those changes. If you want to make changes to your loop to customize it that are in one of these frameworks, you're going to want to build and read this loop workspace, okay? This is an advanced topic. You don't need to know it. I'm mentioning it now because it is a frequently asked question about uh, making some code changes. Sometimes people say, well, how can I change this? And if the answer is it's in a framework, it gets a lot more complicated and you need to do some homework. So the homework that you need to do is understand Carthage and cart files and understand that they exist, they all work together, and that loops workspace gives you a way of dealing with that kind of dependency that goes on during the build. Okay, so back to our normal stuff. I'm going to click on code, and that always takes us to kind of the home page of any repository. So this is the account LoopKit. Loop is a repository or a place of holding code for what we're interested in, which is Loop. The thing that's cool here is if we look at this big green button, it says clone or download. If we click on that and we press download zip, that is the exact same action as you get from loopdocs.org when you click the master branch download. Basically, the master branch download in that button that you push here, that is the exact same link and URL as what you get when you press that download zip button. So just so you're clear, there are two ways to skin this cat. You can go straight to LoopDocs, or if you're in GitHub, you could press the download zip. This download zip button will always download whatever branch is specified over here in this drop-down menu. So you can go down here, look at any one of these, pick it, and that will be the branch that you get when you download. You download zip, no problem. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We're sort of dabbling into learning new spots of this. How many branches are there? It will change all the time. There's always master and dev, but there's other ones that will be in here that come and go. And those ones are what I would call feature or test branches. So if you think about the hierarchy of working on changes to your cookbook, you have the master release, which is sitting in Barnes & Noble on the shelves and not changing very often. The dev branch will be your test kitchen. Things are always changing. They're not announced. You might bring in a new spice. It depends on what was fresh from the garden that day. You don't know what's going on. It's changing all the time. A feature branch or test branch is even more different than a dev branch because it's usually one specific change and that's being tested at a time. So it's not all thrown together. So it's good that if you're making a change, you kind of focus on one change at a time in sort of a separated area so that you can really know that if there's a problem with the code change, you can isolate it to a contribution for just that one thing you're working on. So there's often a lot of branches in here that you'll see which represent kind of a transient or testing sort of issue that's going on there. Where do most of these branches come up? You can click on the branches. You can see all of these things are here. Um, they usually correspond to an area that's coming from a pull request. So basically what happens is that you have pull requests. Pull requests are where somebody says, hey, Dev Kitchen, I'd like you to consider an update in your test kitchen to Dev branch with these changes. I think this should go into your Dev branch. And they submit a pull request, and that pull request has the exact changes to the recipes or the code that they'd like to make. So for example, this is a really good place to see what's coming up and proposed. So anytime we have a frequently asked question about how do I know what's being worked on, what's coming up in the future, go to the pull requests, take a look at it. This is a good place to look. You'll also be able to tell who's submitting them, if it's a person you don't know or if it's someone you recognize like Pete. So you can sort of go around, take a look at what's on the docket, what's being proposed. Pull requests are not a guarantee that it's going to end up in loop at any time. It is just a submission for ideas, and it may or may not make it. So just keep that in mind. So if you read the titles of these pull requests, you can get some ideas about what the topics are. So for example, this one, Pete's proposing to update from the default carb absorption test branch into the dev branch this idea of updating default carb absorption times. He's linked here the issue that he's trying to resolve with this pull request. So it's a link back to the issues list, which is long and lengthy. Anytime people find something that they want to suggest or that isn't working well or want to discuss further, you can open an issue and tell what your feature suggestion is. So this is another idea. There's a lot of discussion on it. You can read through all of the discussion, leave your own 2 cents for what it is. And when you do that, if things are going to be changed in loop, then there needs to be a pull request about that. Now, what exactly is the proposed change from this test branch? You can look at it. What is being proposed is that Lollipop would go from 2 hours to 30 minutes, and pizza would go from 4 hours to 5 hours. So the things that are being changed, the old code is in red, the new proposed code is in green. This is a really easy way to take a quick look at what's being changed. It isn't always in plain English, but if you do a little bit of work between the conversation and the files and reading it, you'll probably get some idea of what's going on. Other pull requests are in here as well. Set carb cache length to 24 hours. You might not understand what that means, but I highly suggest click on it and read what it says. Investigations into delayed display and dosing availability have shown significant cache misses in Carb Store, which makes it slow, especially when the phone has been locked for a significant amount of time. So a lot of you who are writing questions about, hey, my Loop app is really slow to load, you might be affected by that problem, and this might be a good fix for you. And if you want to try it out, this is the branch you'd need to grab in order to get that. But take a look at it. If you look at it, what's actually changed? Oh my gosh, look, it's a really simple 1-line addition onto this file here, loop managers, loop data managers, Swift. So if you wanted to, in this particular case, because all of the change is only in loop, it's not in LoopKit, it's not anywhere else, you could go to your master, you can go to loop managers, and loop data manager, and you can take a look in Xcode. You can copy this line, for example, copy it, and when you go to Xcode on line 68, I'm going to enlarge this, I hope, so you can see. We can scroll down to line 68, There we are, default. So right after cache store, we press return, we press paste. And so on something that's a simple thing to try out, you could either add the one line and try it, or you can build from that branch. Totally up to you. That's just a simple example. Um, really easy. The other thing is that sometimes, for example, right now, one of the topics that a lot of people are asking questions about is automatic bolusing or micro bolusing. So, how do I build that? What do I get? What is it? All of these kinds of things. If you're trying to build something from a pull request area that is in testing, isn't even merged to dev branch yet, here's my big piece of advice. Don't ask somebody else to do the homework you're responsible for doing. What is that homework? It means you need to know how to find it in pull requests, how to read it, how to see what it is. You need to be an active member on Zulip Chat. You get on Zulip Chat and you see the development topics, for example, automatic bolus experimental branch. You can look at this. I'm going to enlarge the font so that you can see it. But you should know how to follow these chats, read all of the testing, read what everybody is saying, and you follow that. You make a point of getting on Zulip Chat and reading it for yourself, because if any bugs are reported, if any behaviors are expected that you should be aware of, if you see things that are strange or you want to provide feedback, you need to be an active participant, not expecting somebody else to explain it to you, not expecting somebody else to give you the Cliff Notes version of it. It just doesn't work like that. You need to be able to come in and read about it for yourself. So that's really important. If you want to build something that's in a feature branch or a test branch or in pull request, and you want to get this code and use it, you need to be responsible for educating yourself and staying educated about it until it makes it into some sort of official loop merge. While it's over in these test areas, you need to stay aware. So I can't emphasize that enough. So let's say, for example, automatic bolus dosing. This is a topic that's coming up a lot. And basically what it is you would go to automatic bolus experimental branch, read what it is from the very beginning, go through the entire thing. And you can read here, it's independent of microbolus's branch. So it's really hard for when people come into Loop Group and say, what's the difference between automatic bolusing and microbolusing? What's the difference between this? You know what? That is an unfair question to ask anybody to answer for you on the internet, because there's a lot of discussion and a lot of nuance, and the answer will change over time. So you need to go in and read the microboluses branch in Loop Dev. You need to read all about it in Zulip Chat. Some of them are in development, some are in general topics. So depending on where it is, you might find it in more than one place. Carb model changes were talked about here, while those were in a feature branch and getting tested. So I just want to make sure that you all know you need to come here and take a look at all of this and really get yourself set up so that you see all of these things. So that's it. This one, we can look, it's on a branch called automatic bolus, which we know we could find by going, I'm going to click on code, I'm going to click on branches, and there it is. There's the automatic bolus branch. I can look, no problem, great, I'm good with that. I'm going to go back here to our other place, just so we're back where we were at the pull request. If you want to grab this, let's take a look and first know what all was done. This commits tab, commits are all of the step-by-step changes that have been done in the development of this automatic bolus branch. So these are all of the little pieces of work that Pete has done over time and refined the recipe. So new saffron, new milk, change the flour, all of that. Each time he made one of those little tweaks, he wrote a note and it made a commit and says this is what it is. So he's got a max bolus fix. He's got a compute automatic automatic bolus is partial application of max bolus. You can read all of these individual commits. You can also go through and click the files changed and see the overall context of all of the changes that were made. If there's a whole bunch of differences, it might not render all of them, but you can go through and you can scroll, scroll, scroll. If you notice, look how short this little line is because there's an awful lot of things that changed. So this is an example of a feature or a test branch where you're not going to be just copying and pasting the lines into your loop code to change it. You're going to need to figure out a more efficient way to test this. And the way that you can test this is you read up in Zulip chat first what's going on. And if you want to grab it, you learn from Zulip chat whether or not these changes are all included in loop code itself or if it requires other frameworks. Some people, when they submit a change, will submit to the frameworks as a pull request and not mention it over in loop or vice versa. So you do kind of need to know if all of the necessary changes are all residing only in loop. Pete does a great job in his pull requests usually for saying if you need to go and get new loop kits or CGM BLE kits or anything like that. He usually has that in there. But in this particular case, it's all here. It is all in loop. You can read all the comments of people who have been testing this out, what changes they've noticed, what things they're concerned about, what feedback they've given him. So it's in Zulip chat, but it's also in the pull request, any kind of loops, bugs or regressions. So it is heavily up to you when you're trying these things to make sure that if you notice something, you don't just post on Loop Group and say, hey, I'm using this super experimental thing and I want somebody to fix it. The place to do that is in these pull requests, in the issues, and in Zulip chat. Go ahead, follow along and read up. So if you want this, you're going to go to automatic bolus branch and you're going to clone or download that branch and you can build with that because in this particular case, all the changes are in loop and not over in LoopKit or other places, I think. And if it was, you would see that. Well, actually, yeah, dev branch, so it's all good. So all the changes are in looped. You could do that. So I'm hopeful that with this little discussion tonight, you understand the importance of if you're going off a master release path, if you're going to use dev or you're going to use a feature branch out of a pull request or some other thing that somebody has posted that they're using, I want you to understand you have the responsibility for staying current with what's going on by following the information in Zulip chat, in the pull requests, in the issues, and following it well and reading up because it's not good to just say, I want somebody else to read about this and summarize it for me. This is important. This is automated insulin dosing. And if you're using things that are in testing and not fully fleshed out yet, you need to stay abreast and find out if somebody reports an important bug, for example. If on Monday it's, hey, I noticed that when I jump 3 times and turn left, that I get twice as much insulin as I do if I sit down. Well, that would be an important bug to know about. And so you do need to be in Zulip chat and subscribe to that pull request so that you can do that. So how can you subscribe to these things? Well, it's really easy. You can go in loop. Excuse me. One of the ways you can do it is in any of these repos. If you're on loop, you can click watch, not watching any kinds of this. If you're watching, you'll be notified of conversations, which is really helpful. The other thing you can do to learn more about what's going on is pick your branch and check the commits. Anytime you click on that commits tab, you'll see all of the individual little changes. You can read those. You can also check the dates and see what's going on. The other last thing you can do that's pretty useful is you can do what's called a compare. So say, for example, you want to compare what's going on in dev branch. Okay, so let's say we want to see what changes are in automatic bolus versus dev. So this little arrow in between the two base and compares, this little branch here, this little arrow says automatic bolus, if it merged into dev and we combine the two, these are the changes that would come in with that automatic bolus branch. In other words, it's all the commits. So all of these things would come in. By the reverse, are there things that dev branch has that automatic bolus branch doesn't have? You can reverse these. If you said automatic bolus on the left and dev branch on the right, you could see if there's some things that dev branch has that automatic bolus doesn't have, and you can see what those are. It's just a couple things. It's not too terrible. You see all those things. The other thing you could do is click on this compare across forks. So say, for example, my dev branch. I know I haven't updated it in a long time because I just haven't thought about it. But the thing is that your forks are what are called copies of the other people's work. So my fork, my borrowed copy of Loop, the dev branch of mine, I haven't updated in a really long time. In fact, it's 48 commits behind Loop's version of the same dev branch. So I'm going to do what I call create a pull request. I'm going to have LoopKit's version of dev branch feed into that arrow going to the left, my version of Loop and my dev branch. I'm going to create a pull request. I'm going to say it's a dev update, create my pull request. It's going to summarize all the different commits that I'm going to get if I do this and I confirm it. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to do them all. Create merge, confirm merge. And now my Loop version of dev branch, my version of Loop's dev branch is updated to match dev branch exactly over in LoopKit. So perfectly matched, all done. It's great. How do you get a fork or how do you get a copy? You can click this fork button up here. Many of you are familiar with the fork button because of CGM and Night Scout stuff. You have to fork your own copy. You can fork copies of anything you want. The thing is once you fork it though, it stays static in time unless you intentionally update your copy or your fork in the process that I just showed you, the compare pull request. So that gives you the lowdown, a little bit of an introduction to GitHub, LoopKit, branches, test branches, pull requests, all sorts of things. It's a lot. I know this is a long video, but if you ask online, will somebody please tell me how to get automatic bolusing branch, or how do I get this new feature, or how do I do these things? I'm giving you this video as a way of me telling you I'm not trying to be rude, but you need to do your own homework on this and get familiar with GitHub, pull requests, Zulip chat, find all the information. So hopefully that helps. If you are testing out any of these new features, make sure you provide feedback to the developers of Loop, either through commenting on these pull requests or commenting in the development topics in Zulip chat. That feedback is really important. I'll say that I peruse, and peruse actually means to read in detail, not to skim or lightly read. I peruse the pull requests all the time. They are really important. So for example, set carb cache length to 24 hours is one I think a lot of people will be very interested in, because we've had a recent spate of people reporting that their iPhone or their Loop app is slow to load, especially after it's been locked for a significant time. That cache, that updating process is taking a long time and it's making it slow to get bolus recommendations. So this is a really simple fix. In this case, it's one line, super easy. I just go ahead and read the pull request, see what's coming up. You'll have an idea of what's coming up in the future, potentially, by reading these things. So for example, incorporate sleep data into complication user info transfer calculations. And you might say, this sounds really confusing. Are they suddenly going to track my sleep data? Why would they do that? You can click on the issues that are with this so that you can understand better what it means. But basically, this one, for example, is all about how often Apple lets the Apple Watch complications update with new data. And you might notice that by the end of a day, you are not getting your BG data in Loop updating nearly as often as you'd like. This is because Apple's limiting it. So this pull request intends to basically let you tell your watch, I'm usually sleeping between these hours, so I don't need my Apple Watch complication hogging up very many updates. I'd like most of my updates to be during my waking hours. So, really simple stuff in concept, and this is a big discussion on it. You can read all of the conversation about the code and the changes and the behavior. Um, so, anyway, think I've gone on long enough. I hope this really helps. It's an important topic. I understand why you're all interested in getting to new code and new pull requests, but I just want to temper that with the homework and the responsibilities you have. If you're going and trying to use new features, you need to research them and understand them. All right, talk to you later. Bye.